There is a kind of intelligence that doesn't flaunt itself, isn't found in textbooks, doesn't need a spotlight, yet instantly makes those who sense it tread carefully. It isn't loud, doesn't need to prove itself, and never seeks validation. It exists in stillness, operating like a fine, sharp blade that appears only when it's time to bring something to a clean end. This is a form of intelligence not everyone possesses, but once you master it, you will see the world in an entirely different way. It doesn't react like the masses. It observes. It doesn't beg. It positions. It doesn't rush into conflict. It ends things in silence. You've met this kind of person before. The man who never raises his voice yet has the entire room orbiting around him. The woman whose gentle smile seems to guide events exactly as she wants, as if invisible strings were being pulled without anyone noticing. They don't speak much, but when they do, every gaze turns toward them not because of volume, but because of the weight behind each word. This is when language becomes a weapon. No wasted movements, no meaningless words, every syllable serves a purpose. This intelligence doesn't come from ordinary smarts. It isn't about IQ scores or academic achievements. It is the ability to control outcomes without revealing your hand. It thrives on understanding human nature, exploiting invisible weaknesses that others don't notice in time. Its danger lies in the fact that the other person only realizes what's happened after it's already done, when the pieces have been moving in your favor long before they noticed. The first step to developing dark intelligence isn't to learn more facts, but to change the way you observe the world. You speak less and listen more. When others talk, you don't just hear the content, you look for the gaps in their story. You notice their eyes, their breathing, their hesitation. You smile at poorly made jokes, not because you're amused, but to see who is desperate for approval. You begin to notice the invisible rhythm driving human behavior, the fear of being abandoned, the need for praise, the urge to prove oneself. Around you, the world runs on a kind of manufactured chaos. People argue fiercely over things that barely matter, protecting lies just to defend their pride. They speak loudly when they're afraid, and act strong when they're falling apart inside. While they lay their fragments bare, you remain on the outside, observing as if watching a chess match where each piece willingly announces its next move. The first rule of dark intelligence: people become predictable when they believe they're safe. That is the moment you can step in without making a sound. Instead of demanding an answer outright, you ask questions that make them reveal what they meant to hide. You give them silence, letting discomfort push them into talking more than they should. You don't need to force it, just let their own emotions write the confession. Every piece of information you gather is not just data, it's leverage. You remember who loses their temper easily, who craves compliments, who fears being left out. You notice the hidden connections between behavior and motive. You can spot a liar before they open their mouth, the insecure before they brag, the betrayer before they act. And little by little, you stay seconds ahead, moving several steps beyond them. The turning point isn't about becoming smarter, it's about stopping your own naivety. You understand that truth matters less than what people believe. You see that belief is a tool, and if you can control another person's illusion, you can control them. From here, your words become precise strikes, every sentence weighed, every piece of information intentional. You don't explain your decisions, you don't answer disrespect with arguments. You let the other person regret their actions without ever engaging in direct conflict. Once dark intelligence takes root, you no longer play by someone else's rules. You rewrite them to fit your design. You never reveal your full thoughts or goals. You never let anyone know when they've hurt you because to you, pain is now just data for refining your strategy. This isn't cold indifference. This is the precision of a mind that knows true power lies not in immediate reaction, but in the ability to control the outcome without exposure. And while others still believe you are gentle and harmless, you already hold complete control over the board. That is the essence of dark intelligence, the kind of power that makes people wary not because they understand you, but because they cannot predict what you will do next. Once it's in your hands, You don't have to seek power. You are the power. It all begins when you realize there's no rush to prove anything. You stay still, letting the world move before your eyes, quietly recording what others overlook. At first, your silence is mistaken for shyness or a lack of initiative, but the less you speak, the more you hear, the deeper you see. In every conversation, you don't just focus on the content, you look into the spaces between the words where secrets tend to reside. When someone tells a story, you notice shifts in their tone, the fleeting flicker in their eyes, the uneven rhythm of their breathing. You pick up on tiny contradictions, on the parts they skip over, on the details they add to polish their own image. Each smile you offer might seem like polite acknowledgement, but inside, you are taking notes. Who is seeking approval? Who is hiding insecurity? Who is wearing a mask of false confidence? Observation gradually becomes a habit, and from habit, it turns into instinct. You begin to notice the rule that governs human behavior. When people feel safe, they reveal more than they should. In those moments, they lower their defenses and expose their vulnerabilities without realizing it. You don't rush in to attack. You let them speak. Let comfort make them careless. Let silence push them to fill the air with information no one asked for. Your thinking starts to shift. You no longer rush to believe words, you care more about the motives behind them. You begin categorizing information into groups: emotional weak points, the need for recognition, the fear of isolation, or the urge to control situations. Every time someone reveals one of these, you store it away like placing another piece on the game board. But the real turning point comes when you understand that possessing information isn't enough. Power lies in how you use it, and timing determines the outcome. You learn to stay silent even when you know the truth, just to see how far someone will go before trapping themselves. You don't need to confront them, just let them keep performing, because the longer they act, the deeper they sink into the trap they built for themselves. This shift makes you start seeing the world as a predictable system. Those who talk too much often reveal their intentions early. Those who are overly friendly usually have something they want in return. Those who appear indifferent are often the easiest to reach emotionally. Once you can read these behavioral patterns, you stop being caught in surface-level stories. You see through the outer layer and recognize the real structure beneath. From here, emotions no longer lead the way. Instead of getting angry when insulted, you observe your own reaction and that of the other person. Instead of feeling sad when disappointed, you treat it as data about their expectations. Instead of fearing threats, you break them apart to find the weak spot. Every emotion becomes a signal, not a command. At the same time, you realize that most conflicts aren't about the truth, they're about what people believe to be the truth. This opens a new door. If you can shape someone's perception, you don't need to argue to win. You only need to adjust their perspective until the outcome bends in your favor. And the way to do that isn't through force, but through guidance. You begin training yourself to ask deliberate questions, not to extract direct answers, but to make the other person reveal themselves. A short question can make them pause, expose a weakness, or unconsciously confirm what you want to know. The power lies in the fact that they believe they're in control of the conversation, when in reality, each response is following the path you've already laid out. As this habit takes root, you stop being a passive observer. You become the one steering the flow of information. You know when to stay silent to create pressure, when to nod to encourage them to speak more, when to change the topic to conceal your intentions. Every interaction is a test. Every reaction they give is a new piece of data. Dark intelligence doesn't emerge from a single moment of insight. It is the result of hundreds of hours of silence, hundreds of unnoticed observations, hundreds of times you chose to listen instead of speak. Bit by bit, you detach yourself from the noise and rush of the crowd, placing yourself in the position of the one designing the board. And once your thinking fully shifts to strategy, you begin to notice the most important thing. People still believe you are harmless. That underestimation is your greatest advantage. Before they realize you're playing an entirely different game, you are already many steps ahead. You don't need to announce your power. You let the results do it for you at the exact moment you choose. From that point on, every past observation becomes a stockpile of strategic ammunition, ready to be used when the time is right. This is how dark intelligence forms, beginning in silence, growing through observation, and maturing when your mindset shifts from reaction to control. Once you've crossed that threshold, you never see the world the same way again. You see the invisible strings behind every action, and you know how to pull them without anyone noticing. The real difference doesn't come from how much you learn, but from the moment you stop letting emotion lead. Praise used to excite you. Criticism used to irritate you. Betrayal used to make you explode. Not anymore. Every word, every action, every glance is received as a piece of information, nothing more. Each event is stripped down, classified, and placed onto the strategic map in your mind. You begin to see that what people call the truth is often just subjective perception. Objective truth carries little weight in power because people act on what they believe, not on what is correct. Once that sinks in, you stop wasting time trying to prove you're right. You invest your energy in shaping other people's beliefs, so they lead to the outcome you want. Emotion isn't buried, it's repurposed into a tool. Anger becomes a lens for locating the other side's weak point, what touched a nerve, why the reaction had to be that strong. Sadness becomes a quiet room for tactical thinking. Who benefits from this? What can be converted from disappointment into advantage? Fear becomes an early warning system, showing which situations require contingency plans. With emotion no longer in charge, you become the architect of action. You don't rush to strike back when provoked. You log the move and wait for the next in the chain to identify the other side's pattern. You don't step into the trap of argument, knowing that the talkative tend to reveal their own weak points. You don't explain your decisions, understanding that ambiguity makes others more cautious than any rationale could. The shift also shows up as thinking ahead. Every move is weighed against the bigger picture. A sentence isn't just an answer, it's a nudge, steering the other side toward the thought you want to plant. An appearance isn't just being present, it's a message about your position in the system. Each silence isn't empty, it's pressure that compels others to fill it. Your processing speed rises. You see a situation and instantly simulate the next scenarios. You watch an exchange and can foresee 5 beats ahead. This quickness doesn't come from raw instinct, but from having reprogrammed your mind to privilege logic over impulse. You spot the liar before the first word, recognize the betrayer before the act, and seize the initiative before others realize the game has begun. Crucially, in the game of power, control isn't winning every battle, it's choosing which battles are worth fighting. You know when to let someone think they've won just enough to lower their guard. You know when to concede on the surface to secure a long-term edge. You know when to remain silent and let rumor do the work. Tactical thinking rewires how you communicate. You speak less, but every line carries weight. Words are chosen not to display yourself, but to produce a psychological effect. You know when to pause mid-sentence, when to lower your voice, when to ask a question instead of giving an answer. You don't try to persuade directly, you let people persuade themselves. From the outside, some may read you as cold or distant. In reality, you are conserving energy for strategic moments. You don't react instantly because slow tempo can make the other side uneasy. You don't reveal plans because ambiguity is the best armor. You don't seek approval because that need is the easiest chain to fasten around a person. Once emotion is fully replaced by tactical thinking, your relationship with power changes. Power is no longer proof of your worth. It's a tool to fine-tune the environment. You don't get dragged into meaningless fights to feed the ego. You act only when the goal is worthy of the resources. You don't measure strength by the number of wins, but by the number of times you make opponents hesitate to begin. This is when dark intelligence reaches a higher tier. You're no longer reacting to the world, you're designing it. You enter a room and instantly know who sets the air and who longs to be led. There's no need to declare status. The way you observe, the way you hold presence, and the way you let others reveal themselves is enough to establish order. When strategy replaces emotion, you don't just shield yourself from manipulation, you place yourself at the conductor's stand. And once you hold the tempo, every game unfolds to your rhythm, even when others have no idea they're moving to each note. Once tactical thinking has replaced emotion, you enter the transformation stage. This is no longer a process of learning or accumulation, but an internal restructuring. You become a new form hard to read, hard to grasp, and no one can truly claim they know who you are. You no longer reveal everything as you once did. Goals, plans, motives, all rest behind carefully arranged layers. Others may think they understand you, but in reality, they are only reaching the surface you've chosen to show. This deliberate restriction of information creates an aura of mystery, making every word you say and every action you take something to be analyzed. While they're busy trying to decode your intentions, they've already lost their rhythm of control without realizing it. Mystery doesn't just come from concealment, but from how you manage your presence. You don't show up everywhere. You don't answer every question. You don't join every conversation. You choose the time and setting to appear so that your presence becomes an event, not a habit. When you're absent, people feel the gap. When you're present, the atmosphere shifts. Rarity itself is power. Self-control at this stage is no longer about restraining yourself, it becomes your natural state. You don't need to force calm, because calm has become your default. You don't have to remind yourself not to react too quickly, because quick reactions now only happen when you want them to. The gap between stimulus and response belongs entirely to you, and in that gap, every decision is weighed against strategic gain. You also start to realize that showing emotion is not always a weakness, so long as you choose when and with whom. A subtle expression, a line that seems spontaneous, can be used as a tool to shape someone's perception. They believe they've just glimpsed a genuine part of you, which lowers their guard, when in reality you've just placed another piece on the board. This transformation removes any need to chase approval. Instead, you focus on building the image of someone unpredictable and hard to approach. This doesn't make you distant from everyone, but it forces each person to adjust their approach to the standards you've set. When they can't be sure of anything about you, they're compelled to remain cautious. At the same time, you develop the ability to use silence as a form of presence, not the silence of passivity, but the silence of someone who controls the pace. When you speak, people listen. When you stay silent, they start asking themselves questions. Those questions are often more dangerous than any answer because they trigger imagination, and imagination tends to magnify reality. Self-control at this stage also means you are no longer pulled into other people's emotional games. They may try to provoke, test, or drag you into conflict, but you only engage when the benefit outweighs the risk. Every interaction is filtered through a strategic lens. Does it add to your position, and does it align with your overall plan? If the answer is no, you simply withdraw without leaving any emotional trace. When mystery and self-control intertwine, you begin to influence not just actions, but the space around you. Others feel your presence even before you speak. They guess, they adjust, they tread carefully, all because they cannot predict your next move. This kind of power doesn't require force, because it's built on the principle of letting others place themselves exactly where you want them, using only what you allow them to see. This is the stage where many mistakenly think you've become cold or detached. In reality, you've learned to value your energy and invest it only where it yields returns. You don't waste attention. You don't drain emotion on meaningless games. Everything is measured against purpose and long-term impact. Once you reach this point, transformation is no longer a choice. It becomes a new identity. You cannot return to your old patterns of reaction, nor do you need to. Others may think they still know you, but they only know the version you once were, not the form you are now. And by the time they realize this, you've already moved too far ahead for them to catch up. The true power of this stage doesn't lie in how much information or influence you have, but in the fact that no one knows exactly when you'll use it. And in a world where everyone is trying to read each other, The one who cannot be read is the one who holds the entire board. A dangerous mind isn't measured by the amount of knowledge it holds, but by how it operates. Those who possess this kind of intelligence don't need to prove themselves, they let results and impact speak on their behalf. Their strength doesn't come from display, but from 5 traits refined to the point of becoming almost instinctive. Emotional detachment. The first thing that makes others wary is their composure in situations where most would lose control. Their hands don't tremble when challenged. They don't falter when attacked with words. They don't shatter under pressure. Emotions aren't suppressed, they are converted into data. Anger becomes a map, revealing the opponent's weak points. Sadness becomes an opportunity to reassess the environment. Fear transforms into an early warning system that prepares them for every possible outcome. Once they are no longer a puppet of emotion, they become the one holding its strings. Surgical observation. They don't just glance, they dissect. Their eyes don't stop at the face. They notice how hands move, how breathing shifts, how facial muscles twitch. They hear not only what is said, but what is left unsaid. A lie, no matter how skillful, leaves traces for eyes trained to analyze. They can sense a change in the air when someone is hiding something, and they store that knowledge for when it will be useful. This trait alone makes the person across from them feel exposed, even if nothing is spoken aloud. Controlled presence. They understand that constant visibility diminishes value. Their presence is always purposeful, calculated in timing and setting. When they enter a room, they don't need to speak to command attention. Their silence, gaze, and rhythm of movement are enough to make them the center of focus. When they're absent, the gap they leave behind makes others wonder why. Rarity becomes allure, and allure becomes power. Strategic language. They don't speak to fill space. Every word is chosen with care. Every sentence serves a purpose. Language is not merely a tool for communication. It is leveraged to shift perspectives and influence behavior. They know when to ask a question instead of giving an answer, when to stay silent to create pressure, when to drop an offhand remark that seems harmless but plants seeds of doubt. The power isn't in volume, it's in the precision of each word. Absolute self-mastery. This is the foundation that makes the other 4 traits nearly invincible. They don't need praise to keep going, don't need to be understood to feel secure, and don't seek validation to confirm their worth. When they are free from external dependencies, they cannot be manipulated. Levers like guilt, shame, or obligation lose their grip. They can cut ties, walk away, or change direction without being held back by excess emotion. A person who needs nothing from you is a person you cannot control. When combined, these 5 traits form a kind of intelligence that is both still and active. Still, because it never reacts recklessly and always waits for the right moment. Active, because when the opportunity appears, it moves with precision and decisiveness. Those who possess it don't need to shout to be heard, argue to be believed, or clash to win. The danger here is not in open threat, but in the quiet unease others feel in their presence. No one is certain what you will do next, and it's that uncertainty that keeps everyone on edge. This isn't a game of muscle or titles. It's a game of the mind, where the one who controls information and emotion holds the advantage. When these traits become habit, you no longer have to force yourself to apply them. They become reflex, appearing as naturally as breathing. Others may think you were born this way, but in truth, it's the result of hundreds of moments where you chose silence over reaction, observation over quick belief, self-control over letting circumstances decide for you. Dangerous intelligence is neither loud nor hurried. It slowly builds power until it reaches a point where a single gesture, a single look, or a single sentence is enough to shift the entire situation. And by the time others realize it, it's already too late for them to protect themselves. Dark intelligence only holds real value when it is applied in life, most importantly, in full view of others without them ever realizing it. This isn't about showing off. It's the art of influencing quietly so that outcomes tilt in your favor. There are 6 subtle strategies you can weave into your daily habits, each striking at core human psychology and reinforcing your position without making a sound. Control the conversation from within. Most people speak to win, to prove they're right, or to stand out. You operate differently. Your goal is to guide, not overpower. Let others talk more, because every sentence they utter is a puzzle piece revealing their thoughts, habits, and weaknesses. You ask seemingly harmless questions sharp enough to pierce unguarded areas. Why do you think that? How did you feel at that moment? What happened after that? These questions make them feel heard, but in reality, you're collecting data. Once you have enough information, a single line or remark is all it takes to pivot their thinking onto the path you've chosen. Use silence as pressure. Most people fear gaps in conversation. They feel compelled to fill silence with explanations, excuses, or concessions. You turn this into an advantage. When someone tries to manipulate or pressure you, don't argue, stay silent. Hold their gaze a beat longer than normal, letting the silence become a mirror, reflecting their own unease. That pause often pushes them to reveal more than they should, or to retreat altogether to avoid feeling exposed. Mirror emotions, then redirect. People tend to trust and follow those who match their emotional state. When someone is angry, mirror their tension so they feel you're on their side, then gradually guide them toward another target or issue. When they're anxious, slow your pace, share a hint of uncertainty to build rapport, and then subtly position them to accept your help or proposal. When they're proud, deliver timely praise and link that pride to an action that serves your interest. Reveal intentions after victory. Never announce your plans while they're still on the table. The power of surprise is the weapon that leaves the other side unprepared. Let people believe they understand you, that they're willingly participating in what you're doing. Then, once the results appear, reveal the truth calmly, without boasting. This delayed realization creates a shock, forcing them to recognize you had planned everything all along, and no one likes discovering they've been led without knowing it. Don't use power to vent emotions. The biggest mistake many make is using power for revenge or self-validation. This only exposes weakness and makes them prisoners of their own feelings. Whenever you need to remove or punish someone, do it quietly, cleanly, without chaos. No arguments, no threats, no letting anger dictate timing. Act when it delivers maximum benefit, not in the heat of rage. A door that closes without warning often haunts longer than any shouted insult. Conceal your true depth. You may be sharp, but never let anyone see the full extent of it. Show them 60% so they feel safe and sometimes think they have the upper hand. When people believe they're in control, they grow careless. That's when you can move with certainty, knowing they won't anticipate you. Don't fight against being underestimated. Turn it into a shield and a source of advantage. The key to applying these strategies lies in seamless integration. They must blend into the way you interact daily, leaving no trace as a deliberate tactic. Once they become reflex, you'll move through social environments like a shadow. No one knows what you're doing, but they feel your presence and influence. To most, you're simply talking, listening, or staying quiet, but every gesture, every question, every pause is calculated. This isn't manipulation for sport. It's maintaining the upper hand in a world where everyone is trying to lead someone else. Once you master the art of applying dark intelligence every day, you won't have to seek advantage. Advantage will find its way to you. Most people approach relationships with pure emotion. When they love, they give unconditionally. When they trust, they open up without limits. When they're angry, they react instantly. But for someone who possesses dark intelligence, a relationship is not just an emotional connection, it is also a structure of power. Emotion is not removed, but it is placed in a strategic position where every action and every reaction serves to protect one's position. The first thing that changes is that you are no longer compelled to reveal everything about yourself. Your past, your standards, your boundaries, all are withheld until the other person proves they deserve to know. Silence about your personal life is not distance. It is a shield protecting you from being exploited. When others lack data, they cannot build a strategy against you. In communication, you learn to let others speak first. They often willingly reveal their fears, weaknesses, and desires when they believe you are listening without judgment. You don't interrupt. You don't rush to share your own story. You observe how they choose their words, how they react when probed deeper, or how they avoid certain topics when you touch on sensitive areas. Every detail is a piece in the power puzzle you are assembling. When someone challenges or disrespects you, the instinctive reaction for most is to confront or explain. You do the opposite, you disappear. No warning, no argument, no opportunity for them to strike back. Your absence creates a void that forces them to ask themselves, "What did I lose? Why did they leave?" It's this unexplained sense of loss that truly shifts long-term behavior. By maintaining consistent standards, you make people adjust how they approach you. You don't need to demand respect. They sense it in how you choose to show up, how you listen, and how you withdraw when necessary. A relationship with you becomes a privilege, not an assumption. And when something becomes a privilege, people become careful not to lose it. You also understand that in relationships, distance creates attraction. Not artificial distance or cheap mind games, but a balance between giving and holding back. You are present enough to sustain connection, yet you keep a part of yourself out of reach. This mystery makes others want to get closer, but never feel they fully possess you. When emotion becomes a structure of power, you begin to see every conversation as a form of negotiation. A compliment might be an investment in your trust. An apology might be a strategy to re-establish position. A promise might be a tool of binding. And you learn to read these layers of meaning without letting the other person realize you are analyzing them. More importantly, you don't use emotion as a hostage, but you also don't allow yourself to become a hostage to someone else's emotions. You know when to extend trust and when to retract access. You understand that love does not mean unconditional acceptance, and that loyalty only has value when it comes with respect for boundaries. In practice, your power in relationships doesn't come from controlling others, but from controlling yourself. You don't get pulled into pointless arguments. You don't try to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You don't waste energy persuading someone who has decided not to listen. Instead, you invest in mutually beneficial connections where value is exchanged clearly and willingly. And once you master yourself at this level, you become someone who is very hard to manipulate. They know that flattery won't buy you, emotional outbursts won't shake you, and your silence is often more intimidating than any criticism. A relationship with you becomes a space governed by unspoken rules, where everyone understands that your access, your time, and your energy are valuable resources, reserved only for those who know how to keep them. When emotion is positioned as part of a power structure, you are no longer dependent on external approval or affection. You retain the right to choose, the right to walk away, and the right to reset boundaries. And paradoxically, it is this self-possession that makes you even more magnetic, because people always crave what they cannot easily own. This is not a cold way to love, it is a strategic way to love. You still give, but you give to the right person, at the right time, and with full awareness that emotion is a resource when used skillfully. It can become the foundation for both deep connection and enduring power. By the time you reach this stage, you are no longer someone who reacts to the world, you are the one who shapes it. You can walk into a room and, without saying a word, still draw every eye. Not because you seek attention, but because you carry an energy no one can ignore, an aura that makes others instinctively adjust their words, gestures, and demeanor in your presence. Your power no longer needs to be displayed. It exists in how you observe without being observed, how you influence without leaving a trace, how you let others step into your orbit while believing it was their choice. This is silent power, the kind that requires no threats, no declarations, yet always forces others to think twice before crossing you. Your intellect has also shifted into a different state. It is no longer the kind that seeks answers to every question, but the kind that knows which questions are worth answering and which are best left ignored. You no longer waste energy correcting small-minded perceptions. You understand that ambiguity can be more effective than explanation, and that a well-placed silence can carry more weight than any argument. You have shed the need to be loved or feared. Others don't have to love you, they don't have to fear you, but they must know you are there, watching, remembering, ready to act when necessary. It is this awareness that keeps them at the exact distance you want. You become the variable they cannot overlook, yet cannot control. Your coldness is not the frozen absence of feeling. It is the clarity of a mind unmoved by small waves. You know when to wait, when to strike, and when to step back to let others destroy themselves. You don't need to witness their fall to feel victorious, because your victory lies in having foreseen it long before. In this final form, every skill, every strategy, every habit you've built merges into one seamless system. You move through the world like a shadow. No one can pinpoint your place in the game, yet everyone feels your influence. When you act, everything is already in place. When you are silent, it is a silence heavy with strategy. Never neglect. Others may try to read you, but all they see are the masks you've chosen to show them, and each time they think they've reached the real you, they discover another layer of defense, more intricate, deeper still. This unpredictability is both your strongest shield and your sharpest blade. You have stepped away from the ordinary games of power, scrambling for position, asserting dominance, clashing head-on. Instead, you create your own board, where the rules are written by you and known only to you. On that board, you don't need to win every match, because you control the pace and the final outcome. When you become someone who cannot be predicted, you don't just hold power, you make opponents limit themselves. They won't attack because they don't know where the counter will come from. They won't draw you into their game because they don't know the rules you're playing by. This caution becomes the armor that shields you from danger without you having to lift a hand. What makes silent power and cold intelligence sustainable is that they rely on nothing external to maintain. They come from self-control, from the discipline to stay out of meaningless battles, from the vision to see far enough ahead not to be trapped by short-term wins and losses. Once all this becomes instinct, your power no longer depends on position, reputation, or resources. It resides in you. The final form is not an ending. It is the state from which you can operate in any game with absolute advantage. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer win by being recognized. You win by making others adjust themselves just to align with you, and they never even realize they've done it. This is the destination of dark intelligence. Not noise, not spotlight, but the stillness of a power so deep it never needs to reveal itself. You are not the one playing by the rules. You are the one who creates them and keeps them in silence.